There are a lot of interview shows on television, both here and in the United States. And I suppose one of the major differences between them here in the United States is that in the US they sort of create a different atmosphere, especially when it's a news related interview with a famous person or something. Um, you can imagine the set. It's got some dark sort of lighting. There's a soft music going on under the presenter. The presenter's sitting at a desk in a chair, and somewhere behind the presenter is tonight's guest, sitting in the background waiting to be introduced. So let's have a look at a typical American interview show with a famous person. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Wallace, Nightline. Our guest in the studio tonight is Dr. Werner van Werner, one of the many German missile scientists who's now working on the United States missile program. Dr. Van Werner, one of the questions most asked, you were involved in the German missile program, and now you're involved in the United States missile program. Was the fact that you were involved in the German missile program a matter of political expediency or a matter of political conviction on your part? Oh boy, not that one again, huh? Well, actually, I didn't have that much to do with it, to tell you the truth. So this goes back to 1940. I was working in a beer garden in Stuttgart. And every Friday night, some of the waiters and waitresses, we go over to one of the girls' places and order some schnapps and pizzas and get hammered, you know. And I was fooling around. I'd go out in the yard and I'd put a tin can down and put a firecracker under it and I light the firecracker. And when it goes off, the tin can jump 4 or 5 feet up in the air. And everybody goes, "Oh, Werner, cut it out. You're making noise. Don't bother people," etc., etc. And so, except at this one party, and this little man come to me. He got a little mustache and some hair hanging down in front of his eyes, and he says, "It's interesting what you do with that tin can there." He says, "What causes that?" I said, "Well, for every action, there's a reaction." And I put the firecracker in the bottom and light it, and the top of the tin can is there, and I don't know. Every time I light the fuse, it just pop up 4 or 5 feet in the air. I don't know. He said, what do you call that?" I said, "Well, I call it a rocket. It's named after my landlord, Irving Rocket." See, I was a couple of months behind in my rent, and the landlord come to me and he knocked on the door and he says, "Well, Werner, you're going to have to knock off the firecrackers in the middle of the night. The neighbors are starting to complain." I said, "Look, I'm working on an invention, and if it's successful, I'll name it after you." He said, "You're going to call it an Irving?" I said, "No, I'm going to call it a rocket." So anyway, the little guy with a mustache and the hair hanging down in front of his eyes, he comes to me and he says, that would make a terrific weapon." I said, "Oh, well, maybe, but I can see some problem." I said, "First of all, you're going to have to get the guy to stand right over the tin can so when a firecracker goes off, the tin can hits him in the face, and I really don't think you're going to be able to get him into that position." He said, No. So what if we took a really big tin can and 100 firecrackers? I said, "Well, we thought of that, but what happens when you get around to light the fuse on the 100th firecracker?" He said, "Look, Werner," he said, "I'm the head of the German people." I said, "Oh, congratulations. I hadn't seen a paper in a couple of days." He said, "How would you like to come and work on a German missile program?" I said, "Well, I've got a pretty good thing going on down at the beer garden." He said, "Look, it's a civil service job, pays $4.50 a month, and when you're 55, you go down to Baden-Baden, you forget the whole thing." It sounded like a pretty good deal. I didn't know what he wanted me to do, but I took it, and I'm sitting there signing requisitions for liquid oxygen and all sorts of things. I didn't know what they were going to do with them, but I'm signing the requisitions, Werner von Werner. Well, to cut the long story short, the war ends, and the Americans come to me, and I've been getting offers from the Russians and other people, and the Americans say, "Look, Werner, we've seen your name on the requisitions. How would you like to come and work on the American missile program?" I said, well, actually, you see, I didn't have that much to do with it. It goes back to a story back in when I was in, never mind. It said, we need a name. So it sounded like a good deal. Yeah, so I took the job. $5.50 a month. When I'm 55, I go down to Miami Beach and I forget the whole scene. It sounded like a really good deal. The United States has now put a man into space, and the Russians, 2 or 3 weeks earlier, put a man into space. Was it the intent of the German missile program to put a man into space? Oh, we put a man into space. Yeah, back in 1940, we put a man into space. I sent my brother-in-law Harmon into space. Well, now that's amazing, because the big problem putting a man into space is re-entry. And apparently in 1940, you had already solved that problem. What's the problem you're talking about there then? Well, Dr. Van Werner, our time is out. We want to thank you very much for stopping by, and we wish you continued success. Well, thank you very much. You're going to give me cash, you're going to send me a check?